We all know the archetype of the rugged pioneer, the self-made man who ventures into the unforgiving wilderness, tames the land with his bare hands, and answers to absolutely no one. It is a deeply ingrained cultural ideal. But in 1955, the Swedish Academy awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature to an Icelandic author named Halldór Laxness. He won the award for writing a novel that took a sledgehammer to that exact myth. His masterpiece, Independent People, presents a dark reality. It argues that the relentless pursuit of absolute self-reliance is not a virtue. Instead, it acts as a destructive obsession that isolates us and actively ruins our deepest human bonds. To understand this obsession, you have to look at medieval Iceland's Visturband. This was a strict system of compulsory indentured servitude. If you did not own land, you were legally bound to work for a wealthy landowner who did. The novel's protagonist, Bjartur of Summerhouses, spends 18 humiliating years trapped as a laborer at the bottom of this feudal hierarchy. When he finally saves enough to purchase his own plot of barren, cursed moorland, his worldview is permanently set. He moves into a tiny, dirt-floored croft and declares his guiding principle: independence is better than meat. For a man emerging from decades of servitude, that stubbornness makes sense. But the story asks a dangerous question. What happens when a psychological shield you needed to survive hardens into an uncompromising, lethal ideology? Bjartur views any form of comfort, or reliance on others, as a direct threat to his autonomy. This applies to his young, pregnant first wife, Rosa. He refuses to seek help or provide basic amenities, forcing them to live in near starvation. When a single sheep goes missing during a ferocious winter storm, Bjartur makes a choice. He leaves Rosa alone in the unheated croft to search the freezing mountains for the animal. He returns days later to a freezing house. Rosa has died giving birth on the floor. The infant girl, Asta, survives only because the family dog lay on top of her to keep her warm. Bjartur's absolute refusal to depend on his community has claimed its first human life. He has drawn a clear line, placing the preservation of his flock above the survival of his own family. Years later, Bjartur marries his second wife, Finna. The family remains destitute until a local charity sends them a gift, a milk cow. Suddenly, the children have nourishment, and Finna finds a source of genuine joy in her bleak existence. But Bjartur despises the cow. He perceives the charity as a humiliating insult, a direct infringement on his status as an independent man who provides for his own. When a harsh winter arrives and hay runs low, he has to choose between feeding his sheep and feeding the cow. Without hesitation, he slaughters the beloved cow to ensure his flock survives. The loss breaks Finna's spirit entirely. She dies shortly after, succumbing to a mix of deep grief and physical exhaustion. Bjartur's ideology has crossed a terrifying threshold. This brand of rugged self-reliance has become a form of systemic domestic violence, prioritized over the very lives of his family members. If Bjartur loves anything in the world besides his sheep, it is his surviving daughter, Asta. He refers to her as the one flower in his desolate life. But because Bjartur insists on keeping his family totally isolated from the community, Asta is left vulnerable. An itinerant tutor hired by Bjartur takes advantage of the isolation, rapes the 15-year-old girl, and leaves her pregnant. When Bjartur discovers the pregnancy, his rigid territorial pride violently overrides his paternal love. He slaps her face and banishes her into the freezing night for bringing shame to his land. He has successfully defended his borders. He fought off nature, rejected the wealthy elites, and achieved total independence. And as a result, he is devastatingly alone. The cruelest irony of the novel is that Bjartur spent his entire life fiercely guarding his front door against nature, leaving him completely blind to the enemies slipping through the back door: modern financial capitalism. This chart shows global mutton prices in the early 20th century. During World War I, demand creates a sharp upward spike, seducing Bjartur to take massive high-interest loans for a modern house. But when the war ends, prices collapse, while his compounding interest skyrockets. Laxness presents a sharp economic critique here. The free man of the famine years is quietly and legally converted into the interest slave of the boom years. The bank forecloses on summer houses.
Modern finance achieves in a few short years what centuries of feudalism could not: complete dispossession of the independent peasant.
Bankrupt and homeless, Bjartur wanders the moors. He finally tracks down his banished daughter, Asta, who is now dying of tuberculosis in a remote town. In the novel's haunting final sequence, Bjartur abandons his pride. He lifts his dying daughter onto his back and carries her away through the mud, heading toward an abandoned, crumbling sod hovel. Absolute independence is a myth. Laxness shows us that to survive against systemic exploitation, you need the one thing the rugged pioneer refuses to accept: the solidarity of other human beings.